Hi everyone, I'm Amy Lee Miller, and today I'm going to talk more about reparenting. I do talk about this in another video where I share tips for healing. That's what the video is called, Tips for Healing. But I got a request recently to do a video on just reparenting. So we'll go a little bit more in depth on that in this video. But first I want to start with a question for everyone, including myself at times. Do you sometimes feel like things are a mess in one area of your life or maybe many areas of your life? When we feel like this, our first instinct naturally is to try and resolve things at the surface level. However, if there is chaos on the outside, the real chaos is coming from the inside. And something really cool happens when we resolve the issue on the inside. The exterior challenges resolve themselves. How amazing is that? It reminds me of a story, a parable most of us have heard. I think people call it the upstream story, the one where people are floating downstream and drowning. And the question is, do we rescue the people downstream and stop them from drowning, or do we actually look at the root issue, which is coming from upstream, and try to figure out why people are drowning, and then we can prevent more people from drowning? So another question, do you sometimes notice that the same kinds of events really keep showing up in your life and really trigger you and or cause you to react in a certain way? There's a reason for this, and it's likely unhealed wounds that we developed in our formative years. So we are all basically little children walking around in our adult bodies with unhealed wounds. Because remember, in order to resolve the issue, we must first identify it. We have to know what it is. And what happened to so many of us, maybe all of us in one way or another, is that something happened to us in our formative years. It doesn't necessarily have to be a horrible thing that happened, from our parents. Maybe we were bullied. Maybe a very unfortunate event happened that nobody had control over. It could be a number of things. It will be different for everyone. But if you are being triggered, reacting in a certain way, feeling angered by certain types of scenarios that keep showing up in your life, that means there is some healing to be done there. And in order to identify the issue, we have to go deep within to try to uncover it. And reparenting is a great way to do this. So I'm not a clinical psychologist. This reparenting is an exercise that is recommended by clinical psychologists and also spiritual healers, and I came across it in my quest for healing. So let's talk about the steps to reparenting. How do we do it? So what you do is you sit quietly alone with your eyes closed, so kind of like a meditation. And always good to start with deep breaths, because that brings us present, it calms our mind, and then it helps to clear our mind. So deep breaths, and then what you do, now this is not fun, but it really does work, and it can be life-changing. So if there is something that keeps triggering you and keeps showing up in your life, or there's some deep pain there, or agitation or frustration that you're carrying around, listen closely, because this is a great way to heal, to work through this. And the only way to heal is to actually work through, identify the issue and work through the issue. Then we come out the other side. So listen up. Okay. So you sit quietly, start with some deep breathing, close your eyes. Eyes closed so that there's less distraction, and you want to remember back to the most painful memory that you can think of. Now, what's interesting is that the most painful event that ever happened to you, you likely blocked out and you do not remember it. But don't worry about that. Just think about one of the more painful times in your life, or one of the most painful memories that you do remember. And then what you do is you sit there and you recall the experience. You, as your adult self, you look in on your child self, how old you were, what you looked like, what you were wearing, if you remember that, where you were sitting, or maybe you were standing, so what you were doing. Were you saying something? Were you thinking something? what were you feeling? What were you needing and what were you wanting? What was happening? So you just watch that. You watch your younger self in your adult mind's eye, and you remember back to what happened, and you let the emotions come up. What will happen is you will likely feel the same emotions that you felt back then, and you will also likely feel these same emotions when you feel triggered today. Because what happened when we have the very painful event, the one or ones that we actually blocked out and we don't remember, is that that needs to be healed. And the universe is trying to help us heal. And the only way to do that is to identify the issue, to work through it. So the same types of scenarios will keep showing up in different ways that hurt us, that stimulate, that trigger that same emotion, and it is very painful. And this will keep happening throughout our lifetime until we go back and resolve the issue. So you sit. So that's the first part. You sit and play the memory like a movie in your mind, and then if other memories come up, and they likely will. See, this is where the surfacing of the blocked experiences, the painful memories, the things that happened that we blocked out because they were too painful, we don't remember, they will come up. So when I did this, so psychologists say that these triggering or these painful experiences that we blocked out that later cause the triggering events happen typically before age 8, during our most formative years. So when I went to do the reparenting exercise, the two memories that I remembered that were my worst, most painful memories, one was when I was 14 and another was when I was 27. So these are well beyond my formative years. So, but still very, very painful, very traumatic. So when I went and remembered back to these experiences, the real one surfaced. And I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot about that. And I remembered it and I felt that same emotion. And then I observed that in my grown-up life now and back through the years as I grew up, that same emotion, different kinds of events would trigger that same emotion because it needed to get healed. So that's something really cool that happens when you do the reparenting exercise. Is it is a way to unblock these painful memories. And the reason that we want to do that is because we have to bring them up in order to get them out. And then we do some brain-changing exercises so that we no longer think of ourselves the way that we started to think of ourselves after that painful experience. Okay, so you're sitting there with your eyes closed and you're remembering back to the painful memories and you're feeling those same emotions that you felt back then and that you likely are still feeling today in certain types of situations that again trigger that emotion. So you let these emotions come up and you sit with them and you feel them and you see if any other, you don't put pressure on yourself to try and remember anything, but you will remember memories that you blocked out because they were just so painful. It's okay. All right, so you see what other memories come up and then you sit with those and you sit with the feelings around that and you let yourself feel it. And again, you're watching your childhood self in your adult mind's eye. And this is the reparenting part. And again, I want to stress that it doesn't necessarily mean that you had bad parents. Maybe you had great parents and it was a different kind of event. Like maybe you got bullied in school. Maybe you missed the bus and you were completely alone and you were scared. It's going to be different for all of us. For a lot of us, it could be a painful event that did occur from something that our parents did. And that's okay too. Parents are people too, and they have their challenges and painful things that they blocked out. We're all people trying to resolve our issues so that we can ascend, okay? So then what you do is this is how you reparent yourself. So as adults, we are now able to give ourselves what our childhood self needed. And we don't have to look for what we are trying to find anywhere but inside of ourselves. So then during the reparenting exercise, you go in, now you envision in your mind's eye your adult self going into the room or wherever that memory is, where your childhood self is going through that painful experience, and you rescue your childhood self. You say, I love you. I got you. I am going to take care of you. I'm never going to let anything like this happen to you again. Or basically, whatever happened, you kind of say the opposite. If you felt neglected, for example, during that painful childhood memory, then your adult self would say, you are not neglected. I have you. I love you. All these positive, genuine affirmations you give yourself. This is so empowering because it teaches us that we don't have to look for anything outside of ourselves. And when we learn and understand and have that awareness that everything that we need, anything that we need or want, we have within ourselves. We don't have to look anywhere else for it. It's such an empowering life transition. When I did this, I think I did it, it started working after the very first time I did it. I think I only did it 3 times. I think, not exactly sure. I did it maybe a couple times and it worked. And then later, much later, like several months later, another triggering event happened and I felt not as upset as I used to feel, but so that the emotional response from the triggering event was less. It had lightened, so there was a lot of improvement there. But I did do it again when I had another trigger, and it helped. From this reparenting exercise, I learned self-acceptance. I learned self-love, and it was such an enlightening experience because, all these years I thought that I was confident. I had a great job always. I mean, once I got my career going, money was fine, health was good, fitness was, pretty good. But there was a deep sadness that I was carrying around with me. And it was because that little inner child needed attention and healing. And we can give ourselves that. You can give that to yourself. So, it could be showing up today, like maybe you're at a corporate event and you feel like you get snubbed by somebody that you try to talk to, and it makes you feel like you're not good enough, and it makes you very angry, and then you feel depressed for a couple days. Well, that's an example of something that needs to be healed there, because on the surface level, what happened there is not that big a deal, but the reason that it hurts so badly is because it's triggering what happened when we were in our formative years. And, at that time, we didn't know how to resolve the situation. We didn't have the ability to take care of ourselves. Kids don't have that, but as adults, we do. So I encourage you, if you notice the same types of scenarios keep showing up in your life and keep causing you pain, take a deeper look. Try this reparenting exercise. Yes, it is painful, but the whole reason we're carrying around this pain all these years, for me, it was over 3 decades until I learned this exercise and I did it and I unblocked the painful memories. For me, I was 6. And again, when I did the reparenting exercise, the 2 most painful memories that I felt like hurt me the most in my life, again, one, I was 14, another, I was 27. So these are not during my formative years, but when I did the exercises, just by remembering back to those and how I felt, the real one came up. And then what happened once I was able to resolve it and find what I was looking for outside of me, which was acceptance and love, I found that for myself, acceptance and love showed up from others. whom I didn't have it from before. And that's what happens. When we give ourselves what we need, we no longer need it from any source outside of ourselves. And then we get it. So let's see what else. I hope you find that helpful. It's okay if it's hard. It's okay if it's scary. But the transformation and the empowerment that comes through this exercise is you'll never go back. You'll never go back to the pain that you felt before once you work through it. So it's worth it. You can do it. I'm Amy Lee Miller, and I believe in you.